The Almighty is not only the God of miracles, He is also the God of restoration, the God who heals even the deepest wounds. I would like to share this story with you to give you hope in your faith. My name is Margaret. I am 46 years old. I was once a nurse in a small district hospital in my town, but today I quit my job to devote myself to spreading the word of God. Before we continue with the story, do not forget to click on the notification button in order to get notified at every new video posted. And if you've been touched by the story, do not forget to click on our PayPal link to help us touch more souls. May God bless you. Oh, if you knew how God broke me to better shape me. It was on a Tuesday evening. I was on call at the hospital at which I was working. And that evening, as usual, my mother could not come home to watch for the children. Due to her little bout of malaria, she was stuck at home. Taken to the neck by the delay, I especially did not want my salary to be cut again. I had already suffered from 3 warnings this month, and my salary was already too far meager. So I had the idea of sending my children to my mother by taxi and trusting the responsibility to my eldest of 12 years to watch them during the journey, which was about 10 kilometers from my house. It was not worrying. I had already done it several times. After they showered, I packed their backpacks with their pajamas, toothbrushes, and other little things they would need for the night, and took them to the side of the road to catch a cab. Once the taxi arrived, I put the children inside, taking care to note the number of the license plate. I had also put communication credit in the SIM card of my oldest so she could call me when needed. I saw the taxi drive off before my eyes, and I saw them drive away in the dark. I ran home so I could grab my purse and head to the hospital where I was working. Once the bag was in my hands, I closed the door and left. Arriving at the place of duty, I marked my presence in the register and put on my blouse, waiting for the 8 p.m. round. The night was pretty quiet, so my colleagues and I were on duty room talking about a patient who needed special care and was scheduled to be evacuated overseas the next day. But deep down, I was not at peace. My daughter still hadn't called me to tell me that she and her brothers had arrived at Grandma's. It was not her habit to be so casual. Yet, I tried to reassure myself by telling myself that, for once, she had forgotten to take that little responsibility. 2 hours later, I still hadn't received a call from my daughter. And I started to have this feeling of deep unease that presaged something bad. So I took my phone and tried to call her several times, but without success. Seeing that I had no results from my daughter's number, I called my mother to find out if my children had indeed arrived at her house, but she didn't pick it up. I was trying to calm myself down as best as I could. I asked my colleague to lend me her phone to reach my family. So she did. I restarted the numbers and it rang without anyone picking up. I was panicked. I called the police, giving them all the necessary details, as well as the license plate number of the car they left in. And the officer on the other line told me that they were going to send a patrol after them. After that call, I kept calling my mother's number again and again, hoping that she would pick up, but to no avail. 10 minutes after, I put my phone down to clear my mind. One of my colleagues from the reception came to our duty room and asked me to follow him. Then in the corridor of my service, he held me and asked me to calm down. I didn't understand why he was acting that way. I thought that maybe he was about to tell me that our ward was going to receive a case of serious injuries and that he didn't want me to panic in the face of blood. But I found it ridiculous because I had been working in the field for 24 years, so I was not new to the business. It wasn't a few drops of blood that were going to make me lose my senses. But what caught my attention was the fact that he made me promise to stay calm. It was starting to get very strange. I followed him to the reception, where he took the emergency bag equipped with tranquilizers. It was a procedure. Then we headed to the emergency room, and once outside the door, I felt him hold my hand tighter and tighter. Once through the door, I saw my lastborn bleeding. He was missing both legs. After this scene of horror, I fell into a black hole. I woke up a few hours later, distraught, asking to see my son so that I could take care of him and comfort him. But that moment, I was far from imagining what awaited me afterwards. I walked into the room where I had seen my son, and the doctors made it clear to me that they had put him in an artificial coma to prevent him from feeling the excruciating pain he was going through. They assured me that they were in the process of stabilizing his situation, but that the most urgent was to rescue the 2 other children who were trapped in the scene of the accident. My heart stopped beating at the moment when I learned that 2 other of my children were in danger. I got up and I got into the ambulance that was to take me to the scene of the accident. During the ride, I felt my hands shaking, fear and guilt haunting me. I shouldn't have let them go on their own in the taxi. I repeated this sentence to myself over and over again. I felt so bad that I was so nauseous. Finally, we arrived at the scene. It was about 2 kilometers away from my house. I realized that it didn't take long before my children were in mortal danger. I should have stayed with them. Oh my God. Neighbors explained to me that the taxi my children were in collided with a truck coming on the opposite lane. Apparently, the truck driver lost control of his vehicle and ran into the taxi where my children were sitting. On the scene, there was my second son lying on the ground. He suffered from head trauma and had an iron bar from the car door piercing his left thigh. When I held him in my arms, he was still breathing but weakly. He was quickly put in an ambulance and on life support. Then we had to look for the second son. Since he was in the dark, we used our torches to search in the grass that was near the road, but he wasn't there. After searching for about 10 minutes, one of the paramedics called us from the other side of the road, letting us know that he had found him. He was the one who hurt me the most. My baby, the flesh of my flesh, was hung like a vulgar garment on one of the logs of the truck. I was heartbroken to see my own baby hanging there lifeless. What had I done to God to deserve this? Yet I lived honestly. I owed nothing to anyone. Moreover, my job was to save lives on a daily basis. In addition, I prayed occasionally. I did not wish harm to anyone. Why did God want to take away what I held dearest in the world? I could not believe it. His body was removed from where he was to be placed alongside his brother in the ambulance. As for my daughter, she was rescued by the local residents. She had nothing, thank God, but she was completely in shock after seeing her brother die like this. We put her in another car so she was not traumatized further, and we headed to the hospital hoping to save the lives of the 2 sons who were still alive. Back at the hospital, I was informed of the death of my son who had been rushed to the emergency room. He had lost a lot of blood with these amputations. I was in pain, but I pulled myself together, hoping to save the life of the second who had had injury. He didn't have too serious injuries, so I decided to stay strong for him to be able to support him both physically and spiritually. I stayed by his side without moving for 3 consecutive days, praying with all my might. I couldn't eat or drink. 3 days later, he woke up from his coma and he asked for food. I was extremely happy when I heard his sentence. I rushed over and went to get him a dish of roasted chicken. It was his favorite meal. While he was eating, he looked at me in the eyes and said, "Mom, Arnold asked me to tell you he loved you so much. I left him with Stephen, and Jesus protects them." I deduced that he knew what happened to his other brothers deceased. He also told me something that totally changed my life. "Mom, Jesus told me to tell you that everything that happened was so you remember that he was coming back and that you begin to accomplish the mission he has sent you on this earth for." I didn't understand anything. Until the day of the accident, I was convinced that my mission on earth was to save lives as an emergency nurse. I was totally confused by the words that came out of my little boy's mouth. A month later, he was released from the hospital and we could finally go home. I then started going to church more frequently and nourishing myself with the Word of God, while praying that He would finally show me the mission He was talking about. It was then that the pastor one day in intense prayers made me realize that my divine gift was to share the Word of God. He explained to me that God broke me in order to mold me better. It was very hard to accept because deep down I thought God could have broken me in another way than taking away my children in such a tragic way. Months passed and I came across the story of Job in the Bible. I read what happened to him, how much he lost before he was restored by the power of God. So I started preaching tirelessly to give hope to those who needed it, to restore the taste of life to those who no longer hoped. After a year, I got married. Today, I'm pregnant with triplets. I found a job as a nurse in the parish in which I exert my prayers. It has a better pay and more flexible hours, and my children are slowly recovering from their trauma. I have already converted 100 people by the power of the divine word. God wanted me to feel the most excruciating pain so that I would better understand the pain of the people I was going to evangelize in my mission.